TV and YouTube here. Thank you for joining me today. It is September 20th. Do you remember? It is September 20th. Halloween is right around the corner. Spooky season, October, approaches us. We are going to continue season 7 of The Last Drive-In with Joe Bob. Let's switch over to the live feed here on Twitch TV so everybody can see what's happening at home. But today we are going to do episodes 9 and 10. Deadbeat at Dawn and Dead Heat are the movies that Joe Bob is going to be discussing. As you guys can see, I got the Sabres cap on. I'm rocking the Killer Clowns from Outer Space t-shirt. We still got some daylight here, so it is still pretty early. The reason I'm streaming early right now is because I want to catch the Syracuse Orange game at 7. Like I said, guys, not really watching WWE content right now. I've been skipping a lot of the SmackDown and the Raw stuff. Not a fan of the writing, not a fan of the story so far. Probably going to get back into the groove around January when WWE and Netflix have the deal going for Monday Night Raw, and then around then we will also be on the road to WrestleMania for another season of that. Today I am sipping on some Monster Aussie style lemonade. So that is the drink of choice today. Everybody at Twitch can see, non-alcoholic. It is just some Monster Energy lemonade. So there you have it. That is the drink of choice. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, ghosts and goblins, witches and wizards, vampires and werewolves, for being here with me right now today. Without further ado, I'm going to let the man, the myth, the legend himself, Joe Bob, take it away.
Did you see that thing with a $75 cup of coffee in LA? This sounds like something you'd be into, Darcy. You know, don't you eat trendy food in LA? Anyway, they had this weekend where you could walk into these upscale bistros called Clatch Coffee and fork over $75 for a single cup of coffee made from beans that were eaten by a foul-smelling forest critter and excreted as a partially chewed-up feces particle in his laboratory cage. Would you like me to repeat that? All right, I'll tell you about it in a minute, but I'm Joe Bob Briggs again, and this is part 2 of Nasty Vicious Death Night. We started out with a high-tone Catholic flick. Now we're going to go down into the gutters of Dayton, Ohio, and believe me, you don't want to be in the gutters of Dayton, Ohio, with the punk gang movie Deadbeat at Dawn. I've never seen more realistic gang fights in my life. Anyhow, Darcy, you should know about this. You don't drink coffee, do you? All right, well, in Los Angeles, the health and fitness capital of the world, the animal rights capital of the world, and the vegan capital of the world, people laid 4 Andrew Jacksons on the table because anything less than a $5 tip for the barista handling this precious liquid would be criminal, and they received in return a ceramic demi-tasse used for, you call that a fucking cup? Containing a dozen sips of a Java concoction that sounds like it emerged from the mind of a mad scientist working in the same back alleys of Osaka where they sell whale meat and Persian kitten appetizers. Of course, it wasn't just any coffee. It was a cup of Alita Geisha 803, the recent record setter at the Best of Panama Green Auction, which is like the Cannes Film Festival of fancy coffee beans. And that's where, yes, Roastmaster is a thing. That's where he sat on the jury. So after awarding the top prize to Alita Geisha 803, Mike was able to nab 10 pounds of the 100 pounds of beans that were available, with all the rest going to coffee fetishists in China, Taiwan, and Japan, places where people even to ingesting absurd food, including, in the case of China, civet meat. Now, the reason I mention civet meat, and by the way, the Chinese appear to be the only people on earth who will eat a civet, is that the award-winning $75 per cup Alita Geisha 803 is made from beans that are grown at impossibly high altitudes using the soil of the Volcan Baru volcano, in Panama, and then they're sent to a Costa Rican lab so that they can be pooped out of a civet. Yes, that's what I said. Now, perhaps it's been a while since you've been to the zoo, and so you've forgotten exactly what a civet is. A civet is a sort of incomplete cat or a wannabe raccoon. In Indonesia, they're pets. In southern China, they're used to cure scabies and as dinner. In Sri Lanka, people routinely kill them because they sneak into attics and leave droppings everywhere. Little do these people know that they should be sifting through the droppings, searching for coffee beans that can be sold to California millionaires. But the Asian palm civet, which is the particular civet we're talking about when we talk about crapping out coffee flavor, also has anal scent glands that rival the skunk for its ability to make you feel like a Sing Sing prison guard who just got gassed. In other words, the civet is one of those sneaky, nocturnal, bug-eyed, furry things that slink around eating sap and berries and hiding out from predators. But many years ago, some guys at the Gamadro coffee plantation in Ethiopia, yes, this rant has now gone from California to Panama to China and is now journeying to a fourth continent. Some guys in Ethiopia apparently had some pet civets since the civet doesn't live there, and the civets got into a bag of geisha beans, geisha being the name of the city where those beans are grown, and they went, what the hell, let's not waste beans, we'll just wait a couple hours and pick the beans out of the civet feces. Remember the eternal question, who ate the first oyster? This is a whole new level. Are you following this? I don't think you're following this. I think we need a world coffee map to adequately explain this. Can you bring out the map, please? Do we have the map? All right. Thank you. Okay. Right here is LA, where people drink gross coffee for $75 a cup.
Me personally, I hate coffee, so I'm most likely going to skip through all of this. I really don't care about learning about coffee right now, especially all around the world. I fucking hate coffee. I prefer a cup of hot chocolate in the morning, if anything. But one thing, you're already awake. God wouldn't have woken you up if you needed the cup of coffee. That's not how it works. So I am going to skip past all of this coffee nonsense.
I tell you what, let me just put it this way. The most sensitive moment is when Jimbo carries his girlfriend to her final resting place, a trash compactor, and presses the button. Finest movie in the history of dating. Let's look at those drive-in totals. We have 4 breasts, 49 dead bodies, 2 motor vehicle chases, arm sewing, double face slashing, shoulder stabbing, hand blown off, head twisted off, exploding neck to the head, bloody wound tub soaking, golf clubbing, human trash compacting, heroin in the bloody toe, beer can thumping, hooker pawing, heavy coke sniffing, urinal head ramming, bloody zombie ghost scene, head splitting, throwing star to the forehead, heads roll, thumb rolls, giant snake, kung fu, baseball bat foo, second all foo, throwing star foo, railroad tie foo. Drive-In Academy Award nominations 4. Paul Harper as the rival gang leader for the sensitive scene where he tells his girlfriend, if you ever do that again, I'm going to pull your eyeballs out of your head and eat them. Mark Pittman as Bone Crusher for screaming, there ain't nothing compared to the rush you get when you're killing somebody. Bill Stover as Stubby, the drugged out hanger-on for saying her intestines looked like snakes. And Jim Van Bever as the deadbeat at dawn for stealing motorcycles for no apparent reason, suggesting his girlfriend take crack in order to feel better, giving his dad money for heroin, stealing wine from winos, getting a little steamed at his family situation when his father attacks him with a meat cleaver, robbing a convenience store for no apparent reason, ripping a guy's throat out with his bare hands, and still coming off as the hero of this movie. 4 stars, Joe Bob says. Check it out.
4-star movie.
Dayton is where the Wright brothers are from. Everything has Wright on it, every sign. Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, Wright State University. That's actually where Jim Van Bever went to school. The Orville and Wilbur Topless Bar. You guys heard of that place? You know, the girls enter from the ceiling. They're wearing these harnesses. They just literally fly in, the strippers. And, you know, if they're wearing thongs and the guy operating the harness is rough with it, those thongs just right up on the hip and they come in low and you got hello right there in your face, which I'm not complaining about. But is it the Orville and Wilbur topless bar or the Wilbur and Orville topless bar? Who was on the first plane? Was Orville or Wilbur on the first plane? Whichever one it was, he could only last 59 seconds. That's why it's kind of an inside joke in the VIP room at Wilbur and Orville's. They try to make sure the guys don't last more than 59 seconds. Kind of sick, right? You think I'm lying? Google it. Maybe it's Wright Brothers topless, something like that. Look under O and then look under W. The website has a picture of a naked girl on a unicycle, which is not the right fetish if you're going for flying strippers. Unicycling strippers probably have better legs, probably, but am I going on too long with this? Am I overanalyzing? I swear, flying strippers. Some of them look like Orville and Wilbur, too. They don't tell you that part.
Okay, the first segment break for the movie Deadbeat at Dawn is at 20 minutes into the movie.
Okay, let's talk about the vicious gangs of Dayton, Ohio here for a minute. I'm sure they had vicious gangs in Dayton in the 80s, but these guys in these particular gangs are actually mostly actors and friends of Jim Van Bebber from Wright State University. Wright State has an acceptance rate of 95% and a graduation rate of 61%, so you get the picture about Wright State. But Deadbeat at Dawn never would have happened if they hadn't given a $10,000 scholarship to Jim Van Bebber for an ultra-violent film that he made in high school called Into the Black. Or was it White Trash? He had quite a few student short films. Anyway, that's Van Bebber who plays Goose, the gang leader who gets pressure from his girlfriend to quit gangbanging all the time. And Van Bebber is one of those guys who started making 8mm films when he was in elementary school. Then by the time he was in junior high, he convinced the nuns and the priests at his Catholic school to let him show movies in a tent behind the school, charging 25 cents admission. And since they were silent films, he would narrate the whole film for the class. This is when he was 13 years old, and the priest apparently never went into the tent because his films were full of zombies, dismemberment, decapitations, just about every gross-out special effect he could come up with. And then after he got into Wright State on the film scholarship, he met two guys, Marcelo Gaines and Mike King. And they all went together to see The Evil Dead, and they decided, in Jim's words, if those fuckers from Michigan can do this, we can too. So they dropped out of school, contributing to that 61% dropout rate at Wright State. Van Bebber didn't like his film professors anyway. He said they were teaching theory instead of film production. Now, what always impressed me about this movie is that the stunts are obviously not stunts. Everybody is really fighting. Everybody's really taking punches. And I mean, obviously, they didn't really blow off a guy's hand, but these are basically professional wrestling stunts in a little first-time indie film. And by the way, that cop car that drives up to break up the gang fight, that was a real cop driving up to run them out of that cemetery because they were illegally filming there with no permits. In fact, the film uses 6 or 7 different cemeteries in the Dayton area because they kept getting kicked out. Anyway, this film was made between 1984 and 1988. It took 3.5 years to finish it. But if you ask Van Bebber what his influences were, he'll tell you the films made between 1969 and 1974, which he calls the golden age of nihilism in filmmaking. And those were films he was watching when he was 7 to 11 years old. So films like Dirty Mary, Crazy Larry, and Vanishing Point, and Who'll Stop the Rain, all films with very downbeat endings. He called these his seminal films. Okay, now think about that. This director, as a 7-year-old, knew what the term nihilism meant and aspired to make movies about the meaninglessness of life. So already we're going, okay, demonic boy genius. And then his second influence was Tom Savini. He read Savini's book, Grand Illusions, and obviously he likes gore effects. And then his third influence was Bruce Lee, because you'll see all this martial arts stuff in this movie. Jimbo's favorite film in the world is Return of the Dragon, originally called Way of the Dragon, the one where Bruce fights Chuck Norris in the Roman Colosseum. Anyway, as you witnessed, he really can work those nunchucks. He can really throw those knives. And he can really yell, "You motherfuckers," at the skyline of Dayton. Oh yeah, one more influence. Born Losers, the first Billy Jack film. He uses the names of the two main characters in that movie, Danny and Hazel, for the names of the rival gang leader and his pregnant girlfriend, the one he hits across the face. So show her how much he cares about his fetus. Paul Harper is that actor. This is his only film role. He was a guy hanging out at Wright State. Okay, back to the movie. You know what I noticed about Dayton? Every presidential candidate goes there like 9 times in every campaign. Obama did that. Trump did that. Hillary did that. As Dayton goes, so goes the nation, I guess. Who knew, you know? Ohio's a swing state, and Dayton is the swing city inside the swing state, and so they have debates there every 4 years. I mean, they should really just settle things with switchblades and throwing stars and baseball bats. I mean, that's what everybody really wants to do these days, isn't it? You know, meet me in the cemetery, Donald. You know, the cemetery is my turf, scumfuck. And then Trump fights Ocasio-Cortez, you know. Trump has the weight advantage, but Ocasio-Cortez has about 40 years on him. So it'd be so bloody and entertaining, don't you think? No? Weapons are better. Shuriken to the forehead. Take that, you liberal. Van Bever is a big Trump guy, actually. Huge Trump dude. He would saddle up for the Donald. Nunchucks for the Prez. Jim Van Bever security detail the next time he comes to Dayton to campaign. Plus, take him out to the Orville and Wilbur Topless Bar on Dixie Drive later.
Is at 29 minutes, just a few minutes after the first one.
Sam Raimi called this movie the first punk action film. And that's pretty accurate. When you ask Jim Van Bever why his character of Goose has to trash compact his girlfriend, he gives a pretty good answer. That the guy wanted a formal funeral for the only person he ever loved, and he couldn't afford a funeral home. What's he going to do? Have her leave her body out on the street? So it's a funeral dirge scene. Anyway, that's sort of an iconic Deadbeat at Dawn scene, but the most iconic Deadbeat at Dawn scene, a scene that has been used over and over by punk bands, a scene that's sort of the punk oath of the 80s, is when Bone Crusher snorts that cocaine and he says, "I hate people, man. I don't give a shit about nothing." And then he riffs on that for about. That actor is Mark Pittman. His only other credits are 3 other Jim Van Bever films. And Van Bever says the only direction he gave him was, "You hate people, let it all out, and your head is full of coke." And Pittman goes, "Okay, wait, just give me a moment." And then that speech comes out of him. And by the way, did you notice that Bone Crusher and Stubby, the 2 girlfriend killers, wear jock straps on the outside of their clothing? Van Bever thought that the rival gang should wear exterior jock straps. I don't know why. He said he got it from Clockwork Orange. I don't remember any show-off jock straps in Clockwork Orange, but there you go. It's also the only gang in history that uses golf clubs as a weapon of choice. You know, they could have gone into that apartment with fire pokers, baseball bats, tire irons, but no, they use a wedge and a driver. So these are gang members who have spent a lot of time on the public links of Dayton. All right, back to the movie. Can you imagine, though, if you did play golf with Bone Crusher? You know, absolutely, man, you barred that hole. I know that other guy is saying you got a 19 on the hole, but he's lying. There's no such thing as a penalty stroke for decapitating your caddy with a 9-iron. That's bullshit that he would say that. Tiger Woods decapitates all his caddies, so sometimes several a day. Yeah, man, you got a 4 on the hole. Good work. Because, you know, don't disturb Bone Crusher. He might take off his jockstrap and use it as a ligature. Nobody wants that. You know, I've had jockstraps that felt like ligatures. Have you? You know, but let's not go there. I don't really even like the word jockstrap because it reminds me of my high school basketball coach. You know, Briggs, what's that on the court? Look over there. What do you see on the court? I don't know, Coach. I don't see anything. That's your jockstrap, Briggs. You left it there when he gave you that head fake. Coach High. Love that guy. He used to guzzle 2 bottles of Pepto-Bismol before every game. He would just take that pink bottle and turn it upside down and chug it. And then make some comment about my jockstrap.
Next segment break for Deadbeat at Dawn at 49 minutes.
So Goose is pretty much at his lowest point now. Jim Van Bebber calls this the Joseph Campbell principle of the suffering hero. Joseph Campbell being the guy who writes all those books about the universal mythology of storytelling. Anyway, beating the crap out of his crazy heroin-addicted dad, pawing women in a dive bar, abusing winos in the alley so he can steal their booze, hallucinating from doing too much coke, and smashing a crucifix in his imagination. Although, where did he get the money for coke? I guess we're supposed to assume he still had some crank from his drug deal. Although it was crank, right? Not coke. I didn't really follow the part where suddenly he's a drug dealer selling to guys who sell to school children and then trying to kill himself, but instead getting his head rammed into a toilet by Keith and then trying to kill Danny for killing his girlfriend, but instead he pathetically agrees to help the Unified Street Gangs of Dayton do an armored car heist. I don't want to say there are plot holes here, but the armored car heist as a rallying point for gang unification, where did that come from? So, several things here. When Goose turns into the deadbeat at dawn, which I guess is the scene where we see him shuffling down the street and everybody's staring at him because he's all messed up and bloody, that's actually not Dayton. That part is Cincinnati, and it's the notorious Vine Street district of dilapidated buildings full of criminals, or at least that's what it was in the 80s. Today it's called Over the Rhine. And it's frou-frou restaurants that charge $32 for a soy burger. But then there's Charlie Getz in that great role as Goose's crazy dad. I think it's a great sequence because at first you can't figure out why Goose is not scared of this guy who's threatening him with a baseball bat. Van Bebber had originally written that role as a very somber, repressed guy. But when Charlie Getz came in for the audition, he was just so high energy that Jimbo totally redid the role just for him. He'd seen him earlier doing Arsenic and Old Lace at a dinner theater in Dayton. Go figure. All right, great energy. The little scene where the boys are playing with toy guns and acting like they're dead, that was a steal from Sam Peckinpah. And he had that kids playing with scorpion scene in The Wild Bunch. The dive bar is in Dayton. That's the Southern Belle Tavern in the Oregon district. It's no longer at that location because somebody turned that bar into a house. The homeless guy in the alley brains out, that's Randy Valentine, who was a janitor at Wright State University. They paid him with porno magazines. And all the scenes in the movie were shot with equipment, quote, borrowed from the Wright State Film Department. They would go in after hours, sneak it out, shoot over the weekend, bring it back. They got the idea from Sam Raimi. He did the same thing with Michigan State equipment to film Evil Dead. Unfortunately, Deadbeat at Dawn was the last movie made that way because Wright State beefed up its equipment security after the movie came out. And when I say equipment, this was 16 millimeter film equipment. Van Bebber to this day shoots on film. He doesn't consider video or digital to be actual filmmaking. He won't do it. He won't touch it. He says, don't even call yourself a filmmaker if you're working in digital. He's making a sequel to this movie called Day of the Deadbeat. And he says he'd rather shoot it on Super 8 and make a 10-minute film before he would go digital. So he is a man of his convictions. All right, back to the movie. See, Jim Van Bebber, he comes across as a tough guy, martial arts guy. But he's got all this stuff in there, Peckinpah stuff, Joseph Campbell stuff. Whoa, Joseph Campbell, I mean, The Hero with 1,000 Faces, that was his big book, his bestseller. And the idea in the book is that every story is Jesus. I'm oversimplifying, but you die and then you come back, right? Isn't that what Joseph Campbell said? So it's the opposite of life, which is you dick around and then you die. So, and I'm oversimplifying with that too. See, a lot of people, a lot of amateur storytellers, they would think, oh, okay, he just trash compacted his girlfriend. That's as low as he can go. But a Joseph Campbell storyteller goes, no, there's 17 more levels of hell. He's going to start beating up whacked out parental figures and stealing wine from winos. I mean, that's pretty low. Guy just spent his last $2 on Thunderbird. You steal his Thunderbird. It's hard to redeem that. I mean, one thing if he was drinking Cabernet Sauvignon or something, but he was drinking Viper. Viper being the alcohol of choice in low-budget flicks ever since Street Trash. That's also in Joseph Campbell. Joseph Campbell died in 1987 right after seeing Street Trash. And then he was able to propose the universal principle, it always has to be Viper. Thunderbird is Viper. I don't know what I'm talking about. Although Joseph Campbell didn't live long enough to taste Tisdale. Have you guys ever tried a Tisdale? It's like $1.50 for a full bottle. California's best, Modesto, California, Tisdale Vineyards, made from grapes that were harvested last week and planted 2 weeks ago. You know, fresh wine. Try it the next time you're in a restaurant. I'm outraged. This Tisdale sure. I demand to see the manager because it's like 50 cents for the wine and $2.50 for the waiter to open the wine. Plus, if you're a wino, there are like 8 different kinds of Tisdale. You can be really, really picky if you're a Tisdale wino. White, red, sweet white, pink. You can have wino tastings in the alley. Tisdale is great.
Me, I prefer Kraken rum. My father used to drink Crown Royal, Crown whiskey. And my mom, she prefers Jameson whiskey. A little bit of Irish whiskey. She is Irish, so she drinks her Jameson. My dad would drink his Crown Royal. And I remember he always used to collect those little purple bags that they would come in, the Crown Royal bags. Me, though, I sip on my Kraken rum. It's got to be the pirate in my blood. Tonight we're sipping on some Monster lemonade. Some Monster Energy lemonade. Non-alcoholic, of course. Just a little bit of Monster Energy lemonade. I do love me some Monster as well. Next segment break an hour, 3 minutes.
Jim Van Bever's motto is pain is temporary, film is forever. He actually says that to his cast and crew. And you're starting to see the result of that philosophy because in the scene we just watched, Jim rappels off the side of that garage. They went there at 7 in the morning because they had rented a Brinks truck for 2 hours and they had to get all the other shots for the scene at the same location. And so Jimbo rigs up the ropes for the rappel from the 4th level of that 6-level garage. And he's about halfway down and the cinematographer is getting the first shot. And the landlord of the place drives up and starts screaming to get the fuck off his building. He says, you have 10 minutes to get off the building. Jim's response, and only a hardcore indie filmmaker would have this response, he yells back at the guy. He's on the side of the building. He yells back at the guy, can I have an hour? And so the guy yells some more, and they start breaking down the scene, and the guy drives off. So Jim says, okay, rig it up again. Let's get another take. And so they start filming the same scene, and they do get a better take. And then the landlord drives up a second time, and this time he's so mad they think he's going to kill somebody. So they profusely apologize, and everybody gets off the building, and they've got all their equipment on the street, and the landlord finally leaves, and Jim says, okay, guys, one last shot. That's hardcore. I'll give you another example. That random marching band, they read in the paper that there was going to be a march against drugs on the streets of Dayton that day, and so they thought, let's have the gang run through the march against drugs. And so that was just a completely candid shot, one chance to get it. They waited till the band was within camera range, they gave a signal, and the whole gang just busted through the ranks of the marching band. And what's strange is the band doesn't even break stride, they just roll with it. Because in Jim Van Bever's opinion, it was because the camera was there. But in my opinion, because if you break stride in the high school marching band, you get yelled at for the next 3 weeks. But anyway, great guerrilla filmmaking. When they throw the burning mattress into the street, that's real traffic. That's confused drivers suddenly seeing a burning mattress in the street. And I should mention the stripper. She was somebody they recruited from the notorious Dixie Strip, which is a topless bar, dive bar, porn star area just north of Dayton on Dixie Drive. And I don't know her name, but a random stripper makes sense in that scene because what would gang members do after their big heist? Hire a private stripper and drink a lot of beer, right? They should have got a flying stripper, though, one of those girls from Wilbur and Norville topless. But it's micro budget. They can't afford the trusses. Okay. I should also mention that when this film came out in 1988, I was one of the few critics that reviewed it. And, well, I was about the only critic who championed it. I think it was written about later by Michael Weldon. I think Chaz Balin reviewed it in Fangoria, even though it's not really a horror film. It's more of an action film with some horror effects. But anyhow, it didn't really take the world by storm until much later. And as late as the year 2000, it was still banned in England. And people always say, isn't that great? Found its audience, became a cult film. And no, that's not great. That means the filmmaker didn't make any money. He just got some acclaim by weirdos like us many years after it matters. So nobody wants to be a cult film. Everybody wants to be a hit film. Anyway, Jim Van Bibber was born in Greenville, Ohio, which is a rundown little town 1 county north of Dayton. And he was one of those kids, I mentioned this earlier, who knew he wanted to be a filmmaker by age 7, even before he had a film camera. And one of those Magimatic still cameras. He would take pictures and lay them out in story form. And then he got a Bell & Howell Super 8 camera at age 12. And he started.
I actually started writing movie scripts at age 4 and 5. So I was writing movie scripts, before I could even probably read some of like my favorite books, but I would always write movie scripts at a young age and write about the stuff that I love, such as horror, Batman, Spider-Man, I remember doing some Dragon Ball Z stuff, but I would definitely write movie scripts at a very young age.
Started making films. And his 1983 film Into the Black, which he made as a high school senior, was a kung fu fantasy film that got him his film scholarship. But of course, he dropped out to make Deadbeat. He was 24 years old when this film was finished, so 20 years old when the film was started. He was the writer, editor, star, fight choreographer, special effects guy, director. He's got a couple of other notable films, My Sweet Satan and The Manson Family, and Roadkill. All feature lurid special effects. It's got some great punk music videos for the 10 years to make the Manson Family film. I mean, once he decides to go for something, he sticks with it. He started another one called Gator Green. It's about alligators and wrestlers. I don't know what stage it's at, but the only project he ever abandoned that I know of was Chunk Blower. I think that one is dead. Anyway, we're about to watch the conclusion of Deadbeat at Dawn, and that ending includes about 15 minutes of the best indie guerrilla filmmaking in underground film history. I really think that if he hadn't delivered this level of entertainment in the final sequence, we wouldn't know who he is today. But he knew these stunts had to pay off, and man, do they pay off. I have to go get Bengay and soak in the tub after just watching these scenes. There's one stunt right here at the beginning of this next sequence. They had no stuntmen. Everybody did their own stunts. There's one stunt where Jim jumps 50 feet from a dam levee. Now, what he didn't know at the time was that there were some huge concrete bases that were hidden about 5 feet under the river level, close enough to the surface to kill him if he hit one. He missed one by about 12 feet. And that was not even the most dangerous thing he did in the movie. We're about to watch the most dangerous thing he did in the movie. So let's go. Let's roll it. Let's go back to Dayton, Ohio in the 80s and party with the maniac cast of Deadbeat at Dawn. Jim Van Bibber, very charismatic guy. He's one of those guys who can call people up and say, we're shooting a movie. Meet me over in the junkyard, bring a beat-up Chevy and a jockstrap and 3 cans of Coors and a noose, and dress in lowrider jeans, no shirt. And people just go automatically, sure, Jim, yeah, it sounds great. He reminds me a little bit of Eagle Pinnell. He was the maniac one-man show filmmaker in Texas in the 80s. They have a lot in common. I went to the Telluride Film Festival one year. They were showing an Eagle Pinnell film, and Eagle insisted on having his own hot tub, and the film could never leave his possession. He had the film cans in a suitcase, and he enjoyed some whiskey and cigars in that hot tub without removing his cowboy boots. I miss Eagle. There were some other people in the hot tub, too. I won't say who. Anyway, you should never reveal who you're in a hot tub with, right, Darcy? Is that right? That's a rule, right? Anyway, my point is, I could see Jim Van Bibber doing some booted hot tub action with whiskey. He is a true drive-in kind of guy.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, ghosts and goblins, witches and wizards, vampires and werewolves, this is After the End Credits.
So in that final scene, this will tell you everything you need to know about Jim Van Bibber. The actor playing Danny is Paul Harper. So that scene was shot at the end of a day where they did 72 setups in 6 hours. If you ever worked on a film, you know that most films might do 10 setups, 20 if it's an indie film. One reason they were moving so fast is that they had no permits to be shooting in that abandoned warehouse place in the first place. So in the scene, Christy's sister is driving the car. Danny stops the car, pushes her off. Jim Van Bibber as Goose is trying to grab the steering wheel, and so he ends up hanging off the driver's side window of the car. So Paul Harper is driving, and he's supposed to go into the alley between two warehouses and try to kill Goose by squishing him against the wall. Well, the car is not the most agile vehicle. It's an old Oldsmobile Delta 88. Van Beber says, go ahead and take me into the wall, Paul. Don't worry about it. I'll get out of the way. So they do the scene one time, and Van Beber is not satisfied. He comes back and says, you weren't close enough. You weren't going fast enough. Do it again. Go faster. So they do it again. Again, he's not satisfied. He says, Paul, you got to drive the car into the wall. So Harper is thinking, well, if I drive it into the wall, I'll kill the director of this movie. So the third time they do it, he thinks, well, what the hell? He wants me to get close. I'll get close. So this time he's got the speed, and Van Beber is actually hitting the wall. His whole body is getting scraped against the brick. But neither of the actors see this huge hinge that's on one of the steel doors. So Van Beber's shoulder clips this big hinge, and Harper hears him groan and writhe in pain. And then the car stops, and they continue the scene, and Van Beber is in excruciating pain, but he finishes the scene. Why? Because pain is temporary, but film is forever. That's his motto. Okay, one more story about this final outstanding fight chase sequence that ends the movie. It's the scene where Van Beber makes that 50-foot leap into the river that I talked about earlier. First of all, Van Beber almost died of hypothermia by the time they got him out of that cold water. So remember, there's a gangster driving a car chasing Van Beber as he runs. But that driver ends up killing a construction worker and then plunging into the river. So the car that plunges into the river, Van Beber bought an old junker for $100, but he needed that crash scene, and so they had a crew member named Billy Yo who had a car that he was about to go get rid of. So Van Beber said, can I just wreck your car? And he said, okay. So they do the wreck part of the scene and the death of the construction worker part of the scene, and then Van Beber wants the old junker car to fly through the air, hit the surface of the water, and sink into the river. They're doing all this without permission. They have no permits to throw stuff into the river, much less crash a car into the river. So they do what you normally do. They rig up the accelerator, and you hope that it'll get up some speed, and then they let the car go, and it did not fly, and more important, it did not sink. It just kind of trundled down the embankment, and then it was about half submerged in the water, but it wouldn't sink. So what did they do? They left. Now, obviously, the police are going to eventually notice a car half submerged in the river. So the cops come to see what happened. There's nobody dead. There's no real accident scene. So they get the VIN number off the car. And the VIN number traces back to the guy who sold Van Beber the car that morning for $100. So that guy rats out the filmmakers. Go up while Van Beber and Mike King, the cinematographer, are sitting in their film class at Wright State University. So the cops go into film class, arrest Van Beber and King. But here's the best part. Van Beber convinces the judge that it's just really, really enthusiastic film students making the first movie in Dayton history. And so they get off with a $500 fine. Indie filmmaking, absolute best. Many of those fight scenes were based on principles that Van Beber had learned from studying the films of the great Tom Laughlin, better known as Billy Jack. But he sometimes dropped acid on the night before the fight scene, adding that extra element of crazy to it. So somebody asked Van Beber if he was doing a punk Rambo in this movie, and he said, no, more like a punk Travis Bickle. So Travis Bickle on acid, that's what he wanted, and that's what we just saw. Okay, Jim, if you're out there, we miss you. Come on back and do that sequel, Day of the Deadbeat. Jimbo loves George Romero films, so that title is obviously an homage. And speaking of women who would fit right in a Jim Van Beber movie, Darcy the Mail Girl is here.
Darcy, ladies and gentlemen.
This is a very
Darcy the lovely mail girl.
Nihilism as a genre is not your favorite thing in horror.
Yeah, this is actually the first time I've seen this movie.
What? We showed a film that Darcy the Mail Girl has never seen. I hope everybody caught that.
I haven't seen everything.
It seems like you've seen everything. So what's your verdict on the film?
It was okay?
All right. If I had to pick a style for this film, I would say it's in the same category as Drill or Killer. Did you like that?
Yeah, it's pretty good. Punk rock sleaze.
Okay. And you're right. This movie is very punk. It reminds me of Abel Ferrara movies like Ms. 45. Do you like those?
Rape Revenge?
Yeah.
Well, I like Revenge better than Ms. 45, which is on Shudder, by the way.
You like revenge, but you don't like rape. You have to have rape or there's no revenge in Rape Revenge.
I like the movie called Revenge.
Oh, you like the movie with the title Revenge when it's on Shudder. Okay. Is that a French movie?
As a French director.
Okay. How about Last House on the Left? That would be another movie in this genre.
The remake is better?
Oh, of course it is. Combat Shock. Have you seen that?
I'm not a huge fan, but it's disturbing, which I guess is kind of the point.
Yes, that is the point of Jim Van Bever and all these movies, to be disturbed. Punk.
It's not my genre. But speaking of Rape Revenge, people have been sending us all kinds of gifts in the mail, including Mayor Zarky and his daughter, Terry Zarky.
I know Mayor. Mayor Zarky?
All right, well then, I have something for you.
Okay.
Here you go, sir.
All right. Mayor Zarky who's of course the director who shot the original I Spit on Your Grave. Joe Bob Briggs, thank you for your support of the 1978 I Spit on Your Grave. We've added 2 new titles this year: I Spit on Your Grave Deja Vu, the direct sequel to the 1978 film, and the documentary about the 1978 film Growing Up with I Spit on Your Grave. All the very best. Terry Zarky, I think that's Mayor's daughter, and Mayor Zarky, North Hollywood, California. How cool is this that Mayor Zarky is sending us stuff? We're actually considering all the I Spit on Your Grave movies for the show because you have the original, the remake, the sequel, and the doc.
You know which one I like better.
The remake.
Absolutely. I have 2 friends in it, actually. Anyway.
Really?
Correct. Anyway, have a look at this. It might be even cooler.
All right. Ooh, this is elaborate. Okay. Joe Bob. Scartisha hosted local Saturday night Universal Horror here in Jackson, Mississippi in 1971. I found her and got this footage from her in 2011. And he has a DVD here. This is the only photo of her for 40 years until that time. This photo is only one of about 10 things she ever signed. Enjoy, Beast Witches, Steve, Farmer Steve Patrick, Canton, Mississippi. And there's Scartisha. Look at that photo. That's kind of amazing. I remember Steve. I met Steve when I did my show at the film festival in Madison, Mississippi. And Steve's a real farmer. That's not a fake Twitter name. But Scartisha is one of the least known horror hosts in America. Great name though, Scartisha. She was at the local station in Jackson, and her show was called Horrible Movie, I think. The last I heard, she was living in LA. Do you ever run into Scartisha?
I haven't met her, but I would love to.
Okay, well, we need to find Scartisha. Scartisha, if you're watching, we're looking for you. We want to have lunch.
Yes, we do.
All right. By the way, I finally found a South Carolina joke.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, ghosts and goblins, witches and wizards, vampires and werewolves. That was episode 9 of our watch-along. When we come back, we will do episode 10, which Joe Bob is going to talk about the movie Dead Heat. We're going to take about a 1.5, 2-minute break. Go get yourself some Monster Energy, something nice to sip on. We got the Monster Energy Aussie-style lemonade here. Go grab yourself a snack, maybe some popcorn, maybe some ice cream. We will be right back. So thank you for joining me for our watch-along. September 20th here. Do you remember? It is September 20th. Spooky season is around the corner, although it's technically every day Halloween when you are with me. Every day is Halloween. But we will be right back after about a 1.5, 2-minute break. Maybe you can see the shirt here. Killer Clowns from Outer Space. There's the shirt. Not a lot of light right now. We're losing the light. We're losing light. There it is. A little bit better there. You can see it. But we will be right back. I will turn on these lights for you guys, since it is getting a little bit darker here. And since it is Friday, we're going to rock with the blue lights. So there you go, guys. Some lights on for you now. and we will be right back. Okay, I am back. Thank you for your patience, everybody. We are about to watch episode 10 of The Last Drive-In with Joe Bob, season 7, 2020. This episode is going to be about the movie Dead Heat. So Joe Bob already got themselves something to sip on. Monster Energy Aussie lemonade here. And we are about to hit an hour in our stream. So we're making some good time here. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, ghosts and goblins, witches and wizards, vampires and werewolves. This is episode 10 of our Watchalong, The Last Drive-In with Joe Bob, season 7. This episode on the movie Dead Heat.
People visiting West Texas for the first time sometimes claim that they witness rattlesnakes eating their young. What's really happening is the baby snakes are too small to defend themselves, so they're running into mama's mouth to take shelter until you walk the heck away. Never assume you know what's going on in West Texas.
Okay, unfortunately, we have to mute it right now. YouTube doesn't like when we play music that they don't approve of. So we are going to mute the intro song. And then when the episode starts back up, we will unmute it, of course. and hear what Joe Bob has to say about the movie Dead Heat. But hopefully you guys are all doing good. Hopefully you guys are getting all ready for spooky season. October is around the corner now. Libra season is around the corner now. I am a Libra myself, born the day after my favorite music artist, Eminem, born October 17th. I'm born October 18th. Coincidence? Maybe. And it looks like we're ready to start the episode.
We have about 1,000 zombies on tonight's double feature. In fact, I would say we have the full range of zombie types in these two movies, from the goofiest zombies with zombies that eat other zombies in between. When you don't know what else to do on the last drive-in, I always say you can't go wrong with zombies. The first movie is Dead Heat. Now, there's a story behind why we're playing that movie. And the second movie is... Should I give it away? I don't know if people will stick around for it or immediately flee the room if I tell them where we're going with the second feature tonight.
Go ahead.
There are people who love horror that still despise this movie. And in fact, this is despised movie night on the last drive-in. Both these movies are despised, but for different reasons.
Go for it. It's not like you don't annoy people all the time already.
Exactly. Yep. Darcy the Mail Girl, ladies and gentlemen, here to field your emails, your tweets, your Instas, your Facebook posts, your texts. What's your text number, Darcy?
Dream on, dude.
All right. So actually, you were there when we rediscovered this movie because it was at the Alamo Draft House in Austin on 6th Street, the old Ritz Theater. And I love to go there because that's the most sophisticated cult movie audience in the world. That means I can just beat them up. I can show anything, and they will turn out. So we decided to do Dead Heat, one of the most critically reviled movies of the 80s on its 30th anniversary, and they loved it. They loved the good parts of it, the awful parts of it, and the parts in between.
I remember that night. It was amazing. But you have to tell them the second movie.
Okay. Cannibal Holocaust. They are groaning all over North America. If anybody writes in from PETA, don't even show it to me. Anyway, this first movie...
I love Cannibal Holocaust. Now, it's not necessarily because it's a zombie movie. I'm not really a fan of zombie movies. But Cannibal Holocaust, to me, is a cannibal movie. And I love the cannibal genre in horror. It's one of my favorite genres when it comes to cannibal films. So, Cannibal Holocaust is one of my favorite. But that will be on the next watch along, not tonight. So right now we are going to discuss the movie Dead Heat. And then the next time around when we stream again, probably Sunday, we'll get to see Joe Bob talk about Cannibal Holocaust.
The movie Dead Heat is a buddy cop movie. And speaking of buddy cops, you were also with Starbucks, right? Remember that? Am I doing too many digressions?
Will it matter if I say yes?
No, it won't. So remember, first Starbucks had that incident in Philadelphia where two guys were arrested in handcuffs for loitering in a Starbucks, raising the philosophical question, is it possible to loiter in a Starbucks? If we were to strictly interpret the definition of loitering, we should ask the judges on the Third Circuit for a clear-cut opinion, but wouldn't everybody inside a Starbucks be loitering like all the time? You know, I'm not even talking about the guys in the French shirts who throw their backpacks onto the wood panel bench and take up 2 cocktail tables with their laptop and their accessories for 7 hours while they finish their indie screenplay set in Belize or whatever. I'm talking about people just waiting on their coffee. Because first of all, there's no place to wait on your coffee. You know, whoever sold you that Cocoa Cloud Macchiato with toffee nut syrup and a mocha caramel drizzle has made some vague hand motion indicating, wait over there for your barista to mix, stir, froth, and inject this son of a bitch. And so you kind of wander toward the other end of the concoction preparation area, hoping not to annoy the 37 other people who are also searching for the perfect tactical position so that you're close to that wood plank where the coffee seems to be plunked down when it's ready, but not so close that you're hogging real estate that rightfully belongs to somebody who ordered us cinnamon dolce creamy 3 hours ago, and if you took a picture of your favorite Starbucks at this moment, what would it be a picture of? It would be a picture of loitering, right? So once the loitering incident went viral, Starbucks went through the nation, including closing 8,000 stores for a whole day, forcing all their employees to take sensitivity training for, quote, unconscious racial bias, and then giving big piles of money to various organizations and individuals. I can't keep track of it all. But I know the CEO flew to Philadelphia so he could be stretched across the Liberty Bell and flagellated or whatever. But then when they were in Tempe, this new viral Starbucks scandal erupted. It was just footsteps from that theater where I was doing the show. 6 Tempe police officers went into their favorite Starbucks to caffeine up prior to their shifts on the 4th of July, a day when drunken chaos reigns, and one of the baristas pulled the cops aside and said that a customer was extremely uncomfortable in the presence of police officers, and so could they please either move out of the customer's line of sight or exit the premises. So the officers left the building, uncaffeinated. And then, of course, they talked about it, and that set off warring factions on Twitter, with half the people wanting to hashtag Starbucks. My theory about both incidents, the loitering in Philadelphia and the hallucinatory law enforcement experience in Tempe, is that the baristas themselves are going insane. Because every day they have to deal with these customers who start out by giving 19 instructions about how to prepare a cup of coffee. Definition, their entire universe consists of people who have obsessive compulsive disorder. Then they have to activate 7 different machines to prepare that coffee because their insane corporate office decided at some point that the steaming thingy can't be next to the drizzle thingy, and that has to be 7 feet away from the thingy. And then they have to deal with a horde of anxious commuters who are watching them like a hawk because they paid $3.79 and for a cup of coffee, and that entitles them to make sure that every detail of their OCD preparation list is adhered to. And of course, since all these people are by definition waiting on caffeine, they're nervous, edgy, scanning the horizon for empty chairs, since the other quaint thing about Starbucks is that there's never any place to sit. And in the middle of all this, they've been to sensitivity training classes about how you're supposed to never put handcuffs on customers. So it caused the second viral incident. It's like some stimulus response research team at the Harvard Institute for Psychotronic High-Strung Tension designed an experiment to see how many nervous people you can cram into one small space, so that eventually one of the laboratory rats erupts in bizarre behavior. Arrest that guy for loitering. Get rid of those blue uniforms. It makes sense once you consider the intense cattle prod stimulation of the whole Starbucks system. Look, the baristas are our friends. Hug them. Bring them cookies. They're really on our side. The last thing they want is viral incidents, because they'll do anything to avoid another day of sensitivity training, first of all. And speaking of guys who need sensitivity training, Joe Piscopo stars in Dead Heat. Pay no attention to the plot. The best way to explain this movie is this is what happens in mainstream Hollywood tries to do exploitation or genre films. Agents, managers, star talent saying, hey, zombies are big. Hey, horror comedy sounds good. Hey, buddy cop movies are big. Piscopo is hot. If you're going to do horror comedy, you better make that horror stick. And that's where it doesn't quite make it. Dead Heat purports to make fun of action, crime, horror, love, and the meaning of life, which means it's got way too much plot getting in the way of the story. Now, normally I don't talk about movie, but this movie was just savaged when it came out in 1988. I saw a TV review where the critic gave it 0 stars. The LA Times called it repulsive and one note and sophomoric. Daily Variety said it was a huge embarrassment made from dumb material. And the screenwriter, Terry Black, had left his job as a computer programmer so he could spend full time writing Dead Heat, because he was trying to copy his brother, Shane Black, who wrote Lethal Weapon. So he wrote this in an Orange Coast College screenwriting class as an homage to the 1949 film noir DOA. Now, if you remember DOA, Edmund O'Brien gets poisoned at the beginning of the movie. He knows he's dying, and so he has to spend his last days trying to find his killer. Okay, same idea here, except after a bunch of rewrites, it was all about zombies all of a sudden. It was the first movie directed by Mark Goldblatt. Mark Goldblatt is one of the most respected editors in Hollywood. He also directed The Punisher, the comic book movie with Dolph Lundgren. But Mark Goldblatt's first film as an editor, Roger Corman for a long time, and he met Gail Ann Hurd there right before she was planning to make The Terminator with James Cameron. So he met James Cameron, they hit it off, and he ended up editing The Terminator and then 50 movies at least. Once he edits a movie every year from 1978 to the present, all feature films. He's worked with directors like Michael Bay, Penny Marshall, Tony Scott, Brett Ratner, Eli Roth, Paul Verhoeven. He edited The Howling. He edited Halloween 2, Rambo, First Blood Part 2, tons of films like Enter the Ninja, Humanoids from the Deep. He loves sci-fi, fantasy, horror. More recently, he edited X-Men, The Last Stand, Rise of the Planet of the Apes, that Death Wish that they made in 2018. He was nominated for an Oscar for his work on Terminator 2, Judgment Day. But what does mainstream Hollywood do best with a low-budget horror script? Effects, special effects. So this movie is mostly famous for only one scene, the scene in Chinatown where the Chinese food comes alive, the zombie delicatessen. The dinner must be killed. And maybe also one other scene where two indestructible 10 feet apart and try to destroy each other with automatic weapons. But effect scenes, okay? It's one of those movies where they try to do 50-50 horror and comedy. And so they cancel each other out. Anyway, they put Vincent Price in it, and they put Darren McGavin in it, and they put Key Luke in it. Remember him, Charlie Chan's number one son? And they even put Professor Toru Tanaka in it, the enormous tag team wrestling champion with Mr. Fuji, if you remember him. And none of that helped. People stayed away from the box office in droves. So, why do we love it here? You tell me. Let's take a look at those drive-in totals. We have 29 dead bodies, 2 undead bodies, 1 dead pig, dead zombie duck, giant Chinese food, chicken animatronic, exploding jewel thief, 2 motor vehicle chases with multiple crashes, zombie machine gun attack, zombie machine gun Mexican standoff, 5 shootouts, 4 explosions, hot tub electrocution, 1 zombie autopsy, 1 skeleton head jump scare, 1 crazed sumo butcher with cleaver, multiple reanimated meat, face melting, exploding Darren McGavin, zombie mixed martial arts, 1 hokey blue light resurrection machine, 2-faced chemical punk monster, 1 porn-addicted zombie security guard, zombie duck heads, reanimated Treat Williams, reanimated fish, reanimated attack pig, gratuitous Vincent Price, head rolls, arm rolls, automatic weapons foo, patio umbrella foo, suicide foo. Let's check it out.
2.5 stars.
What were we thinking? Joe Piscopo and then Italian Jungle Cannibals in the same night. This is one of those shows, you know, where they call you in on Monday morning and they say, okay, you can just turn in your black shirt. You're a disgrace to horror. Because this is not horror. You know, actually I get that all the time on Twitter. You know, how can you call that horror, Joe Bob? It's not a horror film. Like Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer. Why are we watching this, Joe Bob? And the answer is, maybe you'll learn something, you know, like in this movie. Maybe you'll learn to, you know, read the credits carefully, because Shane Black, Lethal Weapon. His brother Terry Black, Dead Heat. And you know what probably really pisses Terry off? Shane is the younger brother. You know, that'd be like being Irving Howard, the elder brother of Mo, Shimp, and Curly Howard, right? The only Howard brother who wasn't funny.
The first segment break at 21 minutes.
Okay, we're 20 minutes in and we've already had every buddy cop movie cliche in the world, complete with the wisecracking sidekick played by Joe Piscopo, the by-the-book straight-laced partner played by Treat Williams, the black captain who reads them the riot act because of their, quote, cowboy adventure, a couple of great motor vehicle crashes, about 47,000 rounds of automatic weapons fire, a morgue scene, two babe supporting actresses who are possibilities as love interests for the buddy cops. One of them with the best line in the movie. Remember that line? Rebecca, the junior coroner, says, "I have a phone, Roger. Using the mutilated skin of street scum to ask after my health is not exactly what I would call thoughtful. But what this movie has that no other buddy cop movie has is virtually indestructible zombie criminals with a disregard for all human life. Plus, one of the two buddy cops is now dead." Okay, I'm not going to do any Joe Piscopo bashing tonight because, first of all, those impressions he did on Saturday Night Live are unequal to this day. Who does a better Sinatra? Who does a better Letterman? What male ever did Joan Rivers? You know, he and Eddie Murphy were the only two guys keeping Saturday Night Live going in the early 80s. And secondly, he obviously got talked into this movie, and evidence of that is the way that they did the script. There's an abbreviation that screenwriters use, LTK. It means line to come. I don't know why they say LTK instead of LTC, but that's what it is, LTK. So this script was full of brackets that said PLTK, meaning Piscopo line to come. They were essentially telling him, just say something snappy and witty right here where this line is, which is not only lazy, it's insane, because the witty one-liners are supposed to evoke character. You can't evoke character when you are the character, you know what I mean? So anyway, Joe Piscopo has had one of the weirdest careers of anybody I know. He went to West Essex High School in Caldwell, New Jersey. I know that because he was inducted into the New Jersey Hall of Fame. And yes, that's a thing. He did dinner theater. He DJ'd on the radio. He joined Saturday Night Live in 1980, the same year Eddie Murphy joined. And what people did not know at the time is that's also the same year he was diagnosed with thyroid cancer. And so all that time he was doing those memorable shows, he was beating the cancer. It took 2 years of treatment. He was basically a radio guy. He went to Jones College in Jacksonville, Florida to study radio station management, and to this day he does radio. He's on an AM station in New York City, and even though this movie did not launch him into a fabulous film career, he has continued to make the occasional film, and I'm a big fan of the comedy he made with Paul Sorvino back in 2013 called How Sweet It Is. He plays the alcoholic theater owner who has to put on a musical comedy to pay off his debt to the mob. And Paul Sorvino plays Big Mike, the mafia guy who insists that all his Jersey Italian friends get parts in the show. Very funny movie, very good performance by Treat Williams, on the other hand, had the opposite career. When you look up formerly trained New York actor, that's a picture of Treat Williams. I don't know why Treat Williams never became a bona fide movie star. Is he too handsome? Is that the problem? But very versatile actor. Maybe that's the problem. He's too versatile. You can't be versatile and be a movie star because he did musicals, he did dramas, he played good guys, bad guys. He was in that TV version of A Streetcar Named Desire as Stanley Kowalski with Anne Margaret as Blanche Dubois. Now that is a little piece of cultural history. Maybe he's too preppy to be a movie star. He actually did go to the preppiest of all prep schools, the Kent School in Connecticut. His mother was an antiques dealer. His father was a corporate executive. He went to Franklin and Marshall College in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, one of those really elite little liberal arts schools. He did summer stock in Pennsylvania. He worked on many musicals. He has a great singing voice. He understudied John Travolta and Jeff Conaway on Broadway in the original Grease, and then he would later take over the lead in Grease for 3 years. He starred in Milos Forman's Hair as the hippie dude, Burger the hippie. He was in 1941, Prince of the City, Once Upon a Time in America. So he worked with Lumet, Spielberg, Sergio Leone. I remember him in The Pursuit of D.B. Cooper. Very underrated film. So what's he doing in a cheap zombie movie opposite Joe Piscopo? Well, he answers that question very succinctly. I like to work. And actually, I think he plays the part beautifully. He underplays it, while Piscopo is overplaying it. The underplay guy always beats the overplay guy, as was proven in that face-off between Robert De Niro and Al Pacino in Michael Mann's Heat. Remember that? Pacino went big, De Niro went small. De Niro won. Of course, part of the reason you have to underplay this character is that this character is now dead. But that's how good Treat Williams is. He dies in the first act, but finishes the movie. Okay, let's get back to the controversial 80s stinker. I was going to say slasher, but there's not much slashing in it. Dead Heat. And I'm only calling it a stinker because 974 professional critics already did that. So, roll it. You know what I think happened with this movie? They spent too much money on it. Make it with cheaper effects. Release it in drive-ins. You would have had a hit on your hands. Try to goose it up with massive special effects work, Hollywood locations, 2 stars, actually 3, because Vincent Price is in the movie. You're gilding the glapola. You know what I mean? Down and dirty, cheap and nasty. That's the way to do these things. That's the way to do a lot of things, if you know what I mean. And I think you just might.
The next segment break is at 35 minutes.
Those PLTKs don't always work, do they? You think you can teach my girlfriend to do that? The snappy one-liner is supposed to flow organically out of the action. So you got Treat Williams doing Hamlet, and you got Joe Piscopo doing Andrew Dice Clay. Anyhow, the actress everybody always wants to talk about when they see Dead Heat for the first time is Lindsay Frost. Randy James at the Dante Pharmaceuticals. And before I go on with that, supposedly the whole secret to the reanimation of dead bodies is an illicit drug called sulfathiazole, which sounds like something nasty you'd take for either your prostate or your thyroid, or maybe both. But then when they discover the resurrection machine, it's just these blue electrical bolts. Are we supposed to think the drug is going through the electrical bolts? I mean, choose one or the other, Frankenstein or Dr. Jekyll. You can't have both in the same movie, am I right? Swallow electricity, and you can't put a poison pill in a Vegematic. That's the 3rd law of insane laboratory physics. And actually, we should write down all the laws of the insane laboratory, because that's the subgenre here. It's an insane laboratory movie. Anyway, the hot actress playing Randy James is Lindsay Frost, comes from an acting family. Her father was Dr. Hayward on Twin Peaks. But that's because her 2 brothers created Twin Peaks. Mark Frost co-created it with David Lynch, and Scott Frost was the head writer on Twin Peaks. So this was Lindsay Frost's first movie after working for 4 years on the soap opera As the World Turns. She was still making movies as late as 2002. She was in The Ring and Collateral Damage, but most of her work has been on TV. You guys know who Lucas Giolito is? Pitches for the White Sox. You guys watch baseball at all? Guy's got a 100-mile-an-hour fastball. He won 9 games in a row last year. He played in the All-Star game. The White Sox had their usual lackluster season, but Giolito was amazing. He had a rocky 2018 season. He was wild as fuck. But then he settled down last year, and he just killed it. Oh, why am I telling you this? Lucas Giolito is the son of Lindsay Frost. She gave birth to one of the greatest right arms in baseball. Anyway, I love the way any moment when the plot starts to lag in this movie, they just go to a raging gun battle, automatic weapons fire. The rules seem to be that you can kill the zombies, you just have to overkill them. Chop their head off, burn them up, something like that. You can't just shoot them through the brain. As we will discover, as Dead Heat twists into the part of the movie known as the what? Roll the film. I had a girlfriend years ago who took all kinds of stuff like sulfathiazole. I never knew what she was popping. So you go to a psychiatrist, and that's all they do now. They give you these cocktails of Zoloft, Xanax, Lexapro, Adderall, Activan, Cymbalta, Flexor, Lamictal, Elavil, Depakote, Risperdal, Zyprexa, Lithium, Abilify. I always thought that one was funny. We're going to Abilify your ass. You may feel bad now, but take some Abilify. You'll want to kick ass. You'll want to kick anybody's ass. You'll want to kick your own ass. You'll kick your dog's ass. You'll be Abilified, Anyway. What'd you take today? Is that the one that makes all your sex organs shrivel up, or the one that causes migraine headaches, or the one that just makes you sleep for 96 hours? Because I would get them all mixed up. But I'm sure they're all great, though. Don't be depressed. Get drugged up. If she said, I'm going to take some sulfathiazole and knock over a few jewelry stores today, I would have said, you go, girl.
The next segment break at 44 minutes.
Okay, Okay, you got to admit, one of the most original reanimation scenes in film history, an entire Chinese deli brought to life by some kind of blue light bug zapper machine. And that moment when Joe Piscopo says, "This little piggy goes to market," and blows away the giant zombie beef carcass, that line was actually given to him by Treat Williams. And there are two legendary performers in this sequence. One is, of course, Key Luke as Mr. Thule, better known as number one son in the Charlie Chan serials of the 1930s. And he was also Kato in the Green Hornet serials. This was near the end of Key Luke's life. He would only live 3 more years. Originally a commercial artist who designed movie posters, but he had made his film debut back in 1934 after being a technical advisor on films about China since he'd been born in China. Also a recurring role in Kung Fu in the 1970s. Also played Master Wang in the Rodgers and Hammerstein musical Flower Drum Song. He was 2 years on Broadway, 2 more years on the road in that show. He never missed a performance. Master Wang. You know, I'm more of a musical theater fan than probably anybody within 100 feet of me right now. And believe me, there are quite a few people within 100 feet of me. But even I cannot stand Flower Drum Song. I mean, he was an excellent Master Wang, though. He continued working right up until his age 86. And then the butcher in that scene is the late, great Professor Toru Tanaka, 3-time WWF Tag Team Champion in the 60s and 70s, frequently disqualified for throwing salt into the eyes of his opponents. One of the all-time great Asian heels of wrestling. I think probably because he was just so huge that when they finally did bring him down, it was like cutting down a redwood tree. The crowd would just go crazy when that big body hit the canvas. In real life, he was known as a nice guy, smart guy. He was a ring general, as they say in wrestling. He was always the guy everybody looked to in the pre-show meeting, which was good because his tag team partner, Mr. Fuji, was considered a wild man, dangerous to the other wrestlers, couldn't be controlled. So everybody was happy that he was paired with Toru Tanaka because Tanaka could get his attention and keep him in line. Anyway, he was from Honolulu. He served 10 years in the Army, started working in films after his body couldn't take it anymore, after all those Madison Square Garden matches. His first film role was opposite Chuck Norris in An Eye for an Eye, 1981. And he ended up doing 23 films, including 2 with Arnold the Barbarian, The Running Man, and Last Action Hero. I remember him from a Jeff Speakman movie called The Perfect Weapon. Still doing martial arts at the age of 61. Passed away in 2000 at the age of 70. And of course, all of this audience remembers his performance in Alligator 2, The Mutation. Only kidding. Nobody remembers Alligator. Enough Asian character actor trivia. Time to go back to the movie. And why did they go to Chinatown in the first place? It was because Lindsay Frost, future mother, the greatest pitcher in White Sox history, said something about how a week before her father, Vincent Price, died, he had her take a big load of sulfathiazole to a guy in Chinatown. Okay, but why would you deliver the main resurrection substance to Chinatown when the resurrection machine is in Encino or wherever the fuck, another location, and you already control it? Do we really need the sulfathiazole subplot? And for that matter, do we need the animated deli meat special effects sequence? No, we do not, but thank God we have it. So, yeah, I gave some drugs to Master Wang. Sounds like an erectile dysfunction commercial. You know, Master Wang uses sulfathiazole, and you can too. You know, you saw him in Flower Drum Song. Never missed a performance, if you know what I mean, and I think you do. Don't just master your Wang. Oh man, this is hurting my head. They go to the cemetery because why? You know, I want to take a look at Loudermilk's grave. It's a mausoleum, and when they get there, there's a lamp in the mausoleum, and on the inside of the lamp, there are some numbers written in blood. Is that what happened? Are they checking the crypts to see whether Loudermilk is alive or dead? Also, what's the whole thing about she's not really his daughter, she's just some chick that he took out of rehab and bought her a house? And then do they ever check the crypt? Do they see whether Loudermilk is in there or not? No, because there's a lamp with numbers on it, mysterious numbers. And then they go back to her house and Joe Piscopo is dead upside down in the fish tank. What was he doing at her house? They already checked her house. Why didn't he go to the graveyard with everybody else? And what happened to Rebecca? You know, if you're out there checking bodies, wouldn't you want the trained coroner babe along for the ride? You know, that's Claire Kirkconnell as the coroner babe, Rebecca, a fashion model. Her big breakthrough was as the female lead on the Paper Chase TV series in the 70s. Remember when they made a TV series about Harvard Law School? Probably not, but she's from Brown, San Diego. Go Comets. She modeled and had a lot of supporting parts and walk-ons on TV, and then she did this around 1994. Also, why do Randy and Rebecca not like each other? What's that about? First time they meet, like passive-aggressive catfight. And why does Darren McGavin keep popping into scenes he doesn't belong in? Did he literally just drive up in a BMW, wave, and drive off? It's getting kind of late in the game here to explain all this stuff. So, back to the movie. Also, do people seem to be a little blasé about death itself in this movie? I guess that's the joke. But when Treat Williams dies at the beginning, they don't seem that upset. They go into that decompression chamber and sit there with his body and kind of chat. You know, Piscopo is still doing one-liners, you know. And then when Piscopo dies, same thing. When 27 cops die in the opening scene, is there anything in the script about the bagpipe parade funeral? You know, you got to have a bagpipe parade funeral, right? You got dozens of LA's finest lying dead in their uniforms in front of some Beverly Hills jewelry store, and everybody's like, okay, just don't fuck up again. You know, you got zero emotional reactions to anything going on anywhere in this movie. My conclusion, the movie was obviously made by rich people in LA. Am I right? You know, oh, somebody died? Well, send the family some decorative plants and ask if it had anything to do with diet, because I'm thinking of cutting out all gluten myself. So LA is a cold place for being such a warm place.
The next segment break at 1 hour, 9 minutes.
Okay, 2 questions. Vincent Price leaves numbers on your phone? That's his level of cryptology? And number 2, this whole thing with the resurrection of dead was done so that the mastermind could knock off jewelry stores? That's as close to world domination as we get? Just saying. So, all right, evil Darren McGavin. Always a great performance no matter what material he has to work with. Best known as the dad on A Christmas Story and Kolchak in the beloved Kolchak the Night Stalker series. Consummate actor, trained at both the neighborhood playhouse and the actor's studio. Normally you do one or the other. He did both. And his breakthrough role goes all the way back to 1955, The Man with the Golden Arm as Louis the Drug Pusher, probably the best Frank Sinatra film, unless you count From Here to Eternity. But actually, he had 2 breakthrough movies. I would say his performance in The Court Martial of Billy Mitchell was equally stunning. He was in 200 movies and films, continued to do theater his whole life, starred in Death of a Salesman, The Rainmaker, The King and I, won an Emmy for Murphy Brown, and then the other iconic East Coast actor in this flick is, of course, Vincent Price. Guy, born in St. Louis. He made his acting debut at age 23 on the playing dukes and kings and historical figures, Walter Raleigh, Joseph Smith, Cardinal Richelieu, Omar Khayyam. Well, we don't really remember him for those. Remember him for his feckless roles. Is that the word? Feckless. It means, you know, shallow. You don't give a feck. So he's charming, but he's oily. You know, movies like Laura. And then, of course, he discovers horror in 1946 when he does Dragonwyck as the demented, drug-addicted landowner terrorizing Gene Tierney. It was full speed ahead horror from then on. You know, The Mad Magician, The Fly, House on Haunted Hill, Blur, The Bat. He had the long association with Roger Corman. He did all those Edgar Allan Poe films. In the 70s, he made The Abominable Dr. Fives and Theater of Blood. And then by the late 80s, when this movie came out, he was sick. but he still wanted to work, and he just barely made it into the 90s with Edward Scissorhands, because Tim Burton wrote a especially for him. Anyhow, both Darren McGavin and Vincent Price seem wasted here. You know, as you'll see in the conclusion of Dead Heat. Looks like Vincent Price's whole performance is insert shots. But I know what the producers were probably thinking. They were just, you know, just having the two of them around would give the film a certain gravity and credentials that it wouldn't otherwise have. Okay, Zombie Treat Williams is a motorcycle cop from hell on his way to kick ass as Dead Heat careens toward its climax. Let's go. You know what Vincent Price could do that nobody does anymore? Radio acting. He did stuff with Orson Welles in the 30s. He recorded all of Edgar Allan Poe's poetry, plus Shelley, plus Walt Whitman. He was on all those shows like Lux Radio Theater, BBC Mysteries, CBS Playhouse. Had his own radio show every Wednesday night. Sears Mystery Theater. He was also the art curator for Sears. You could order paintings for your home, picked out by Vincent Price. He was originally an art student when he first went to London. He wrote books on art collecting. So, but why does nobody do radio theater anymore? I know of one place in New York that does it. It's called Radio Theater. It's down on the Lower East Side. Dan Bianchi runs that theater. They do Lovecraft. They do Bram Stoker. But you got all these podcasts now. Why is nobody running with that? Why aren't these guys unearthing all those great old radio dramas? And you know why? Because they don't want to work. They'd rather just shoot the bull about Halloween 3, right?
I heard that.
I know. I said it just for you.
It's the truth, though. And the next segment break after the end credits.
One of the credits there at the end is chicken animatronics. I personally thought the duck animatronics and the beef cow animatronics were better than the chicken animatronics. But anyway, here's another question. Who was the ultimate evil mastermind? Loudermilk or McNabb? Was McNabb working for Loudermilk, or was Loudermilk a deluded stooge of McNabb? We'll never know because they exploded Darren McGavin. Vincent Price does the best he can, but the material is just so awful. Poor people are supposed to die, but God wants us to live forever. And even if he doesn't, we can always buy him off. That's just an insane line. That's just, it's the end of the movie. He needs to be spouting profound, crazy Jim Jones stuff, not stuff that a televangelist would be ashamed to say. And then, what were they thinking? Of course the word of mouth on the movie was bad, because anybody who tells the story has to reveal that both of the leads are marching off to their death in the final scene. They're going to turn into gooey sidewalk scum, just like Lindsay Frost did in that excellent melting scene where her limbs start falling off and then her head rolls. Lindsay Frost, mother of one of the greatest starting pitchers in the history of the Chicago White Sox. Did I mention that? And by the way, Steve Johnson did the makeup effects on Dead Heat. Great job, but he did such a good job that they had to remove several minutes from the movie, including one whole scene. It was a dream scene in which Treat Williams is given a surprise death day party with balloons and zombie guests and a bikini-wearing creature played by Linnea Quigley who pops out of a cake. So anyway, Steve Johnson's gory effects were so good that they were threatened with an X rating if they didn't brutally cut the film. And since there was never a Dead Heat 2, there was never a director's cut. Mark Goldblatt would direct The Punisher and then go back to editing with Clive Barker's Nightbreed. They recently gave Goldblatt the Lifetime Achievement Award for editing. Well, Dead Heat came out the same day in 1988 that another buddy cop movie came out, Shakedown, starring Peter Weller and Sam Elliott. Shakedown got great reviews. Dead Heat did not. And it took our drive-in mutant family to bring it back. I wouldn't call it a cult film just yet, but it's got lots of fans. Okay, Darcy, let's get to the mailbag. Since we have zombie animal meat in the first movie, what would you call it? Animated cold cuts? Oh, they wouldn't be cold, so animated hot cuts. And we have actual on-screen cannibalism in the second movie. So I asked Darcy to come up with a culinary nominee for the Silver Bolo Award, which
Silver Bolo Award
excellence in horror media all over the world. In fact, this is the Silver Bolo. As you can see, it's genuine silver. It's made of genuine silver. And we send this out to the winner every week. Thank you, Yuki. Take the Silver Bolo. So what do you got for me in Silver Bolo land tonight?
I have the homicidal homemaker.
She's on Twitter.
I hope you've heard of her. She came to one of your shows. She loves you.
Oh, then she has to win. All right.
Very funny, campy presentation, but they're still real recipes. She has like the stuffed marshmallow cake, chopping mall, bloody orange Julius, and one that's dear to my heart, a Nightmare on Elm Street soul pizza.
You like her pizza?
That pizza is the reason I became a vegetarian in the first place.
Because of that specific pizza?
Oh yeah, it traumatized me.
Really? All right. I don't want to get into vegetarianism right now because we're going to get deep into vegetarianism. We are going to get deep into vegetarianism and meat in the next movie.
Looking forward to it.
All right. Well, you'll make sure that Casey gets her silver bolo, right? You get it back from Yuki. Okay. She lives in Fresno, California, and she actually cooked all night during the Dinners of Death marathon. So her recognition is long overdue. So are you ready?
Oh my God. Why do you say it like that?
Are you ready for Cannibal Holocaust?
Whoa, you're scaring me.
We should all be scared. This might be the last episode of The Last Drive-In. People get angry when you show this flick.
Then why are we doing it?
Because we can. Who else is ever going to host this movie? Did we ever talk about the amazing Lincoln Kennedy parallels?
I made a song called Cannibal Holocaust as a tribute. It's on my first ever studio album project, Fall from Heaven. If you want to listen to any of my music, you can go to my Instagram because all my music is on Instagram because YouTube sucks and won't let me post any music on YouTube. But all of my music is on my Instagram, OVO Demonic. You can check out all my songs from Fall from Heaven. And right now I'm currently working on disc 2 for Moth to a Flame. We just finished disc number 1. So disc number 1 is finished. Disc number 2 is in progress. And all of Fall from Heaven is complete. It is on my Instagram at OVO Demonic. So I also have a song called Cannibal Holocaust as a tribute to the movie.
The incredible facts linking Abraham Lincoln to John F. Kennedy. Like, Abraham Lincoln was elected to Congress in 1846. John F. Kennedy was elected to Congress in 1946. Abraham Lincoln was elected president in 1860. John F. Kennedy was elected president in 1960. The names Lincoln and Kennedy each contain 7 letters. Both men were particularly concerned with civil rights. Both wives lost their children while living in the White House. Both presidents were shot on a Friday. Both presidents were shot in the head. Here's an interesting one. Lincoln's secretary was named Kennedy. Kennedy's secretary was named Lincoln.
I didn't know that.
Both were assassinated by Southerners. Both were succeeded by Southerners. Both of their successors were named Johnson. Andrew Johnson, who succeeded Lincoln, was born in 1808. Lyndon Johnson, who succeeded Kennedy, was born in 1908. John Wilkes Booth, who assassinated Lincoln, was born in 1839. Lee Harvey Oswald, who assassinated Kennedy, was born in 1939. Both assassins were known by their 3 names. Both assassins' names comprise 15 letters. Booth ran from a theater and was caught in a warehouse. Oswald ran from a warehouse and was caught in a theater. Both Booth and Oswald were assassinated before their trials. And most interesting of all, a week before Lincoln was shot, he was in Monroe, Maryland. And a week before Kennedy was shot, he was in Maryland, Monroe.
Oh my God.
Okay. Interesting history trivia there from Joe Bob there at the end of the episode. But that is the end of our watch along. Thank you for joining me tonight. Ladies and gentlemen, ghosts and goblins, witches and wizards, vampires and werewolves. As I said, we will most likely be back Sunday night for another stream. Hopefully, if everything goes good with our laptop, if we're not having any technical difficulties. I'm also going to watch some football games tomorrow, college football Sunday. I believe it's week 3 right now. And of course, the Buffalo Bills, my hometown team, is playing on Monday Night Football. So no stream on Monday, most likely going to stream again on Tuesday next week. But thank you for joining me so much. I appreciate it. It is currently September 20th. Do you remember? It is September 20th. So hopefully you are getting ready for spooky season right around the corner, although every day is technically Halloween with me. I celebrate every day like it's Halloween. So it's already October to me. We're already kicking in that gear. But thank you once again for joining me tonight for our watch along of The Last Drive-In with Joe Bob, Season 7, Episodes 9 and 10. Until next time, ladies and gentlemen, ghosts and goblins, witches and wizards, vampires and werewolves. Peace, God.